In this lecture, we will look a little bit over the basic types in Go. As we talked before, Go is a strong type language. That means that every variable that you declare in Go has to have a type assigned to it. So there are a couple of basic types in Go, and we will go through each of them. I just created a basic scaffold project just to go over these variables in more details and to actually print them out and see what do they look like in real life. So for this one, let's first of all look at how we declare a variable in Go. So there are two types of declaring a variable in Go. We will go over the first one in this lecture. So what we will do is use the keyword var, which is defining a variable in Go. And the second parameter would be the name of the variable that we want to declare. Let's take for default like foo. And then there is the type of the variable. So in this case, what I'm going to do, I'm going to first of all declare a type. Let's say variable foo is a string. And then I'm going to give this string a value, which will be, this is a string. And next, what I will do, I will copy this one from here and print it out at the bottom right here. And then I'm going to go run dot and see what I can get out of this. As you can see, this is just printing out the value of the variable that we declared right here. So this works fine. Let's just comment this out now, because what we want to do is to see what is a rune in Go. So in Go, a rune is a character. So it's just one single letter from a string. This is an overly simplified definition, but let's see how this looks in practice. So my rune will be A, and printing this out, I get printing the value is 97. So how does this work actually? Well, it's pretty simple, because in the background, a rune is just an unsigned integer. So what this means is that this rune, the value of the rune is actually 97, but when it prints it out, we have to transform this as a string. So if I try to put a string right here, ABC, you will see that my IDE is complaining. So to declare a rune in Go is quite different than declaring a string. So a normal string, you would use double curly braces, double commas, sorry, and you would say ABC. But a rune, to define a rune, you just have to use simple one comma. This is pretty straightforward. So this is how a rune looks like. Let me tell you this, you won't get a lot of cases where you will need to use a rune, but this is very good to know how this looks like. And just keep in mind that the underlying value of a rune is an integer. So let's clear this out. Let's try with a byte now. So let's say that foo is equal to A. And you will see that the IDE is complaining because I didn't uncomment this one here. So let's use the same letter A for a byte, and trying to print this out, you will see something very, very interesting. So if I go run dot, I will see that actually the value of a byte is still 97, the value of the same byte, the letter A. If I go letter B, I would see that is 98. Pretty interesting. So a rune and a byte in the background are just integers, the real value of them. So let's get to the integer and let's talk about it a little bit. So there are a couple of integer types in Go. So you would see, most of the time you would see like int, and then you would see like int32, and then you would see uint. And you may be wondering, what is all this about? Well, an integer is a normal integer, is like any other thing that you would expect from it. So if I go run dot, the value is 23. What this is different from the unsigned integer is that this can actually take negative values. So if I try this out, I see minus 23. Pretty neat. Now let's try the same thing with an unsigned integer. This is what the u in front of the integer stands for. So let's say foo equals to 23. And I misspelled it. This is better. And printing this out, I get 23. What if I try to put like a minus in front of it? Well, the IDE is already complaining that this cannot be a negative value. The unsigned integer cannot take a negative value. Okay, so an unsigned integer can be just a positive integer. So now let's look at the integer 32. This is pretty easy because it's a 32-byte integer, so nothing more to show here. The value is still 23, but it supports just 32-byte integers. Okay, this was quite interesting, right? Now let's look at the float in Go. Let's uncomment this line and say foo equals to 0.23. And what I will get when I run it is 0.23. Nothing unexpected. So this float 32, if I take out the 32, you will see that this is not actually a type in Go. So every time you define a float type, you have to specify if it's a 32-byte or a 64-byte. So if I try to use 0, I will get 0, and if I try to use again 23, clearing this out, and I get 23. This is interesting, right? So a float can actually hold integers, but it can also hold floats. Okay, let's not go over the float 64 because the same thing, we cannot actually get such a big number. The next one would be a boolean. So let's say var foo is a bool, and then we'll say foo equals to false. So if I try this out, I'm getting false. Okay, pretty straightforward. Let's try with a true and clear this out and go run. Oops, I forgot to specify the value of it. Interesting. So if I didn't specify the value, it appears that Go is saying that this value is false. What this means is that every type in Go has a default value that it can take. So let's look at this one. Let's play around a little bit with this. So let's go over the integer and uncomment these lines here and just take out this variable assignment right here, a value, and let's print this out. Okay, so I get a 0. So the default value of an integer in Go is 0. Let's try something with a string. Let's get rid of the value and printing this out. And you will see that this is actually an empty string. So every type in Go has to have a value. Even if you don't specify it, it will take the default value of that type. We will explore this more in the next lectures, but for now, let's end this lecture right here and move on.